Lenny sat by the fireplace and thought about how he would spend his birthday. He would be 26 years old tomorrow. But he didn't know how to celebrate this day. In addition, the holiday coincided with the day of his idol, Martin Luther King. At one time, this man did the impossible, and helped national minorities throughout America to finally throw off the shackles of slavery and discrimination. Because of this historical figure has always fascinated the young man. Lenny went through various ideas in his head. Get drunk with Joshua and Ryan like last time, go to a computer club, try to pick up some girl on the street and spend time with her. But he didn't choose anything. "Oh universe," Lenny said, and tilted his head back. "Send me some kind of celebration. I really don't want to be alone." A few minutes later, someone knocked on the door. Lenny got up from his chair, but tripped on the carpet and fell to the floor. If I got $5 for every fall like that, I'd be a millionaire, he thought, and got to his feet. Then he went to the door and looked through the peephole. But there was no one at the door. Then the guy opened the door and looked around. Marius, that was the name of Lenny the cat, came out of the apartment and sat down. He was wondering why his man had suddenly become alarmed and left their cozy abode. The cat's attention was captured by a strange piece of paper lying on the threshold of the door. Marius put his paw on her and meowed. His meowing caught Lenny's attention. "What did you find again, cat?" Lenny asked and picked up the glossy paper. "The RIP Quest Organizer Company invites you and your friends to spend time on the site we have prepared in honor of the upcoming Halloween. For just $100. The offer is limited. Book a quest by calling 999-666-999, Lenny read aloud. He picked up the cat, went back into the apartment and closed the door behind him. Then he took his phone from the bedside table and wrote messages to his friends. After receiving an answer a minute later, Lenny smiled and dialed the specified phone number. While waiting for an answer, he released the cat. Soon, a pleasant female voice answered him. "Hello?" "Yes, hello. My name is Lenny. I saw your advertisement about the quest. Is the offer still valid?" "Yes, of course. Will you be alone or with someone?" "There will be 3 of us," the guy replied and felt the cat begin to rub against his legs. "But in general, please tell me, can I take the animals with me? I just have a cat who is very attached to me. I don't like leaving him at home alone." There was an awkward silence. Lenny already thought that he would be rejected, but life, apparently, decided not to disappoint him. "You can take a cat for an additional fee. Only he should be with you all the time. How you carry it with you is up to you. And yes, you'll have to pay an extra $50 for that. Come to the West Forest Quest tomorrow, by midnight." "I understand, thank you very much," Lenny said and jumped up and down with joy. His cat was scared by the sudden change of mood and ran away. Half an hour later, both Lenny and his cat went to bed. The next evening, Lenny and his friends Joshua and Ryan were standing at the entrance to the West Forest. The old black gate creaked and created an atmosphere of mystery. None of them knew how they would spend the night. "Didn't they tell you what we were supposed to do?" Joshua asked. He was wearing time-worn jeans, and on his shoulders was a red raincoat. Underneath he was wearing a white shirt, jeans and sneakers. "Nope. They only said to wait here closer to midnight. And now it's only 5 minutes to 12. 5 minutes before my birthday and the start of his celebration," Lenny said excitedly. Marius the cat poked his head out of the bag that was slung over his shoulder. The owner and his cat often walked like this together. "Well, since this is a quest, then we will solve some riddles. Right?" Ryan asked. He was very fond of mysteries, mysticism and other horror. He scared some people with his excessive directness. 5 minutes later, the gate opened, and a beautiful girl dressed in all black came out to them. A black hat, a black scarf, shoes, a skirt, a cardigan. It was as if the night itself had appeared in human form in front of the guys. "You're our guests today, aren't you?" "What is it?" she asked. "I think so, miss," Lenny said. Marius leaned out of the bag and looked at the girl with interest. "Miss Knight. What should I call you all?" "I'm Lenny. And this is my companion and the best cat, Marius. On my left is the fearless Joshua, and on my right is the smartass Ryan. Nice to meet you, Miss Knight." "And me. Well, follow me. Today you will have an exciting journey into the world of mysteries and mysteries." The boys followed the girl and entered the Wesso Forest. There were all sorts of creepy themed decorations here and there. "You've done a great job, Miss Knight. You can feel all this horror. Oh, and there are even ghosts." Joshua exclaimed in delight and pointed his finger at the tree. There were 3 ghosts hanging on the branch. "Well, it's not scary," Ryan said, "but in the Fantasy World scare room that was open in the summer, yes, it was scary there. And this, For an amateur. Don't get carried away with words, Mr. Ryan. Our journey is just beginning. Who knows what's going to happen, huh? Said Miss Knight mysteriously. A group of people approached the creepy house. A dwarf was waiting for them on the threshold. Welcome to our immodest and creepy abode, he said in a raspy voice. I hope you enjoy your stay here. And remember, everything is not as obvious as it seems at first glance. Marlowe, don't scare the customers. Better let's get ready. And I ask you, our dear guests, to come inside. Make yourself comfortable. The quest will start soon, said Miss Knight. The girl touched Lenny's shoulder and whispered in his ear, Happy birthday. I wish you a good time. The young man shuddered at the sound of her voice and nodded curtly. The guys went into the house. They found themselves in a spacious living room, which was lit by candles and a couple of oil lamps. The door closed behind them. Friends decided to look around. Ryan walked over to the antique unlit fireplace and sat down in a nearby armchair. There were a couple of cups with strange numbers on them on the table in front of the chair. What do you think these numbers mean? Joshua asked. Does it matter? Ryan asked. Of course it does. What if this is part of our quest? All of a sudden, it's just a fart, Ryan quipped. Some cups. Probably from a cheap Chinese store. Leave him alone, Ryan, Lenny said. If he wants to tell fortunes, let him guess. Don't spoil the mood for all of us, please. A few minutes later, Lenny's phone received a call from an unknown number. The guy accepted the call, and then, at the behest of a mysterious and unfamiliar voice, turned on the speakerphone. The voice continued. Greetings, mortals. Today you will have to solve many mysteries to find the answers you need. The fact is that a mysterious death has occurred in this house. The police were unable to solve the case and issued a verdict that the landlady committed suicide. But is this really the case? There are 3 envelopes under the armchair in front of the fireplace. Each envelope contains a note stating your role in this investigation. You have to stick to these roles to fully experience the atmosphere. You have all night to solve the mystery of Miss Lorraine's death. You also have 3 questions that you can ask by calling this number. But considering that today is one of your birthdays, you can ask 1 question right now. And you'll still only have 3 left. Are you ready to ask? There was silence. Only Marius the cat purred, enjoying Lenny's strokes. The guy, in turn, was actively thinking about which question to ask him or his friends. Joshua finally realized. At what time did the death occur? At midnight. And with that, I switch off. I wish you good luck. Lenny locked the phone screen and put it in his pocket. Then he asked Ryan to get up from the chair to push it back. After that, they picked up 3 envelopes from the floor. Well, are we opening it? Lenny asked. Yeah, let's get to it, guys. It's not for nothing that the money was paid, Ryan said and opened the envelope. After reading what he had written, he whistled. Detective Ryan, at your service, gentlemen? I'm single. Sometimes I drink too much. I don't sleep well at night. I'm also really boring. This is about negative qualities. The good things about me are keen eyesight, flexible logic, and athletic abilities. What about you? I'm Mrs. Smith, Joshua said in a low feminine voice. Nice to meet you. I'm meant to talk like this all the time until we solve the riddle. And yes, I'm very afraid of the dark. I don't like strangers, and I sneeze from dust. On the positive side, I have good morals and know how to support people. I also cook delicious food. I don't know how I'm going to use all this. I'm a detective's assistant. I have a great sense of humor and deductive abilities. One of the disadvantages, I smoked a lot in the past, which causes shortness of breath. I'm also allergic to cats. Lenny looked sadly at Marius and pretended to want to sneeze. A minute later, after the guys had sorted out their roles, a shot rang out in the house. Everyone immediately followed the sound into the next room, which turned out to be a bedroom. A woman's body was found there. There was a gun in her hand, and she was lying face down on the floor. Lenny touched the neck and discovered that it was just a doll. Exhaling mentally, he said, "She's dead." "Of course she's dead, dear Ryan. She put a bullet in her head, poor thing," said Mrs. Smith. "And there are no traces of someone else's presence. It's very strange." Look at this." Detective Ryan walked over to the table by the window and picked up the letter. There were 4 lines. "I'm a whore, that's my excuse. Caroline will never forgive me. But will I forgive myself? And here's Henry. Am I really that expensive? He wanted to come, but I refused him. My family home has been desecrated by my deeds. So it's God's will. You know, the further into the forest, the scarier the wolves, gentlemen. For some reason, I don't think the police even tried to look for any evidence. They were handed them on a platter. What makes you think that, dear Detective Ryan? To me, it's clear that the girl cheated on her friend's man and couldn't stand the pangs of conscience, Mrs. Smith replied. And you wrote a letter, didn't you? Of course she wanted to confess. At least, that's what I think. Detective Assistant Lenny started coughing. He stroked the cat and thought about it. Detective Ryan, let me read the letter to you again. The assistant detective voiced the request. Please. But I've already read it several times. And yet something bothers me. Lenny read the letter a couple of times, and then caught his eye on the first letters of each sentence. The word closet loomed. The detective's assistant went to the only closet in the room and opened it. But it was empty. I don't understand anything, said Lenny. In the letter every sentence begins with a letter. If you add up the 4 letters, you get a cabinet pointer. But it's empty. Mrs. Smith went to the closet and looked into it, but she also saw nothing. Well, or just someone is trying to put words on the globe. There was an owl, Detective Ryan said. Well, or an owl, yes. Anyway, Lenny, you're trying to make your illusions come true. Lenny touched the wall of the closet with both hands. The wall gave way back and people saw a secret safe. Well, that's something new, Detective Ryan said irritably. He didn't like that his assistant was smarter than himself. 4 digits, Detective. It seems to me that the key to Miss Lorraine's death lies in the safe. Well, or a hint. Then let's search the room. Maybe the password to the safe is hidden somewhere here, suggested Mrs. Smith. The detectives began to explore the room. They looked at every corner, but they couldn't find anything. Suddenly, Assistant Detective Lenny had a thought. Listen, do you remember those cups that were in the living room? Well, with the numbers? It seems to me that each cup had a 2-digit number on it. Maybe this will help us in some way. Okay, let's go back. And you, darling, stay here. We'll be back soon, Detective Ryan said. No, you can't leave me alone? It's creepy and very scary here. It's only for a few minutes. Nothing will happen to you, don't worry. Mrs. Smith finally gave up and sat down on the bed. The detective and his assistant went down to the living room. In the living room, 2 people found 2 cups on a table in front of the fireplace. There were really strange numbers written on each of them. A minute later, they heard a man scream. Holy shit, is that Joshua? Lenny exclaimed worriedly. You mean to tell Mrs. Smith? It doesn't matter, let's run to the rescue. Lenny shouted and ran into the bedroom. When the 2 guys ran into the room, they didn't see anyone. Even the corpse was gone. But Marius the cat was lying on the bed and calmly looked at the newcomers. Joshua, Ryan shouted. He's not here. A few seconds later, Lenny's phone rang. He answered the call and immediately turned on the speakerphone. We have your companion. The stakes are rising. You have 30 minutes to solve the mystery of Miss Lorraine's death. If you don't meet the deadline, there will be consequences. After that, the caller hung up on you. How do we know that the organizers are not bluffing? Lenny asked. Lenny's phone beeped. He received an MM's message. When Lenny opened it, he saw Joshua on his knees. His head was resting on a wooden log, and there was a blade on top of him. Your division, Lenny said. Looks like we're in the shit. I'm fine, partner. Stop playing this useless roll-off paper, Ryan. A friend has been kidnapped, and if we don't guess the password to the safe, he will die. Convulsively, Lenny grabbed his phone to call the police. But the device was out of service area. Although he had received a message earlier, there was no way he could call anyone now. Calm down, you're not going to help him with your screams. Let's look at the cups, maybe they are the key to the safe. Lenny and Ryan picked up the cups that had been brought in a few minutes ago and examined them. They had the numbers 89 and 65 on them. Let's try to enter the password 8965. Come on, Lenny said, and let his friend walk forward. Ryan entered the password, but nothing happened. Then try 65 or 89. Ryan did just that. He entered the password and the LED on the safe switched from red to green. There was a package inside the safe. There was an old rusty key in it. Lenny looked at his watch and noted with annoyance that they had 20 minutes left. He said to Ryan, Great, we have the key. But what is it from? I don't know, but clearly not from the exit. Let's take a look at the message they sent you. Do you see the walls? They're made of stone. So there must be some kind of basement or cellar under this house. We just need to find him. The friends went into the living room and began examining every corner and every brick in the fireplace. But they never found anything. 15 minutes left before Joshua dies, Lenny said sadly. Don't worry, there's still time, Ryan shouted. Marius the cat, whom everyone had forgotten, lay down next to the carpet in the living room. His attention was attracted by the threads that fluttered from the light breeze. The cat started playing with the threads from the carpet, which attracted Lenny's attention. The guy squatted down and pulled back a corner of the carpet. There was a wooden hatch with a keyhole under it. "Lenny, you found it," Ryan exclaimed happily. He took out a newly found key from his pocket and inserted it into the keyhole. The key came up and the guys were able to open the hatch. There was a ladder under the hatch. The two companions went down it and saw Joshua, who was unconscious. The sharp blade was about to cut off his head soon. "We need to free him," Lenny shouted. "So how are you going to do that?" A girl came out of the darkness. Her face was hidden by a wedding veil, and she was wearing a white dress. "Solve the riddle, mortal. And then your friend will live. Once upon a time there was a girl, but she committed a mortal sin. And she paid for it. So what happened to her?" Lenny was speechless. He tried to pull himself together, but he couldn't. He sat down on his knees and cried loudly. A harmless desire to have a good time turned into a disaster. His friend was about to die. Some unknown ghost appeared. Lenny's sanity was slowly starting to fail. Ryan ran up to Lenny and tried to calm him down. But it didn't work out. Then he ran up to the ghostly girl and said something softly to her. Lenny still wasn't paying attention to what was happening. Marius went up to Lenny and jumped on his lap. The cat meowed. But his master still didn't pay attention to anything. He was crying softly, pressing himself against the wall, as if he wanted to disappear into it. A few minutes later, Joshua came up to him and said in his usual voice, "Hey Lenny, calm down, everything is fine. Everyone is alive. It was just a game. We were joking." Lenny slowly raised his head and looked at Joshua with a strange smile on his face. "No, it's not true. You're dead. It's just like the voice on the phone said. We didn't save you. I didn't save you." Yet Joshua pulled away from his friend and walked over to Ryan. "The guy's really bad. I think we went too far." "You think?" Ryan asked and looked sadly at Lenny. He was nervously stroking his cat, muttering something. "I see. Call an ambulance. Maybe it's not as bad as I think it is." "And what do you think?" The girl who had been pretending to be a ghost asked worriedly. "I think we've broken our best friend." An ambulance arrived half an hour later. Lenny was taken to the nearest city hospital. He was only able to fall asleep when he was put on a sleeping pill drip. His cat and faithful companion Marius was lying at the feet of his master. Some time later, Lenny woke up in a hospital room. Marius was snoring softly on his chest. Lenny looked around and saw that there was a vase of flowers on the bedside table next to him. There were 2 daisies in the vase. "Huh, that's weird. It's as if 2 flowers were deliberately brought for the repose of my body or soul," the young man whispered in a low voice. Marius's ears twitched when he heard the familiar voice. First he opened one eye, then the other. And then he rubbed his nose against the nose of the owner. "Marius, are you here?" "My most loyal friend, he will," Lenny said with satisfaction. This reaction only pleased the cat and he touched his forehead to the forehead of the owner. A minute later, Lenny fell asleep again. Everything was quiet in the room, too, and almost nothing had changed when he woke up. Except for one thing. "Where's Marius?" Lenny asked excitedly and tried to get up from the bunk. He did it. His feet touched the cold hospital floor and he walked to the door. He opened it and looked out into the hallway. But it was empty. Only a cold white light illuminated the space. Lenny decided to find a nurse or a check-in desk. At least someone who could help clarify the situation. How Lenny ended up in this strange place. And about where the cat, the young man's best friend, has gone. After walking along the corridor, the guy reached the reception desk. The nurse on duty was not there. At the same time, the workplace itself looked untouched. The inherent clutter of the workplace was not visible. All the pencils and pens were in the organizers, and the documents were stacked neatly. "It's a strange place," Lenny muttered aloud. "There's no one here. It's like it's not a hospital, but some kind of purgatory. Am I dead?" Suddenly, Lenny felt a touch on his left shoulder. When he turned around, he saw no one. But the feeling of a hand, mostly female, did not leave him. Shaking his head, the guy opened the door and approached the counter from the inside. He saw black flip-flops under the table and decided to put them on. Anything is better than walking barefoot, he thought. Lenny went on to explore the hospital. And he had no doubt that it was a hospital, because the last thing he remembered was the sound of an ambulance. This endless view always annoyed him. After a while, he came across an open ward. Although the lamp was not lit there, The only light source was a wax candle standing alone on the windowsill. The young man went to the windowsill and looked out the window. But there he saw nothing but solid darkness. But in the reflection behind him, he saw a mysterious figure standing in the doorway. Lenny turned around, but the figure didn't seem to be there at all. "I could have sworn I saw someone," the guy said irritably. "Hey, there, come out, stop playing hide and seek with me." There was only silence. Only a few seconds later, someone knocked on the window. Lenny froze. He really didn't want to turn around. Something was scaring him very much in this whole situation. The brain has already begun to draw a chaotic picture that death itself is standing outside the window with a scythe and waiting for the guy to look into her eyes. Still, he slowly turned around. To his relief, no one was visible outside the window. It was still pitch black. But the light in the hallway suddenly went out. "Damn, this is a bad time," Lenny shuddered. He took a candle from the windowsill and headed out of the room. Already on the threshold, he heard another knock from the window. This time the knocking was much more insistent, more impatient. "Oh no, I'm not going to watch no matter what it is," Lenny said and left the room. "St. Luther King forbid. I hope it's just a dream. God save me." The guy crossed himself clumsily and walked down the corridor. This time, he decided to return to the front desk. And then he went to his own room, because he felt safer there than outside the familiar walls. "I saw shadows here and there. Burning wax dripped from the candle, but warming in its own way." These feelings calmed Lenny. Although in any other situation, the wax on his skin would irritate him. "I'm sorry, I'm not a fan of such games," he said aloud and laughed. "Well, if you don't laugh yourself, no one will, right?" No one answered. When he reached the counter, it seemed to Lenny that someone was sitting on a chair. Goosebumps ran over his skin, but he didn't get too close. On the contrary, he pressed himself against the wall and clutched the candle even tighter. A shout came from somewhere behind him. "Lenny, it's us." Then from the front, "Come back to us." Lenny himself only quickened his pace. Finally, he reached his room, but there was no light there either. Still, he closed the door behind him and dripped wax onto the wooden table. And then he set a candle on the wax spot. Suddenly, a TV turned on above the wall and illuminated the entire room. Lenny jumped on the spot from this sudden phenomenon and clutched his heart with his hand. "Holy shit! Stop it!" he shouted. Meanwhile, the ripples in the TV had passed, and a face appeared on the screen. It seemed painfully familiar to the young man. Lenny exclaimed in surprise and joy at the same time. Martin Luther King himself seemed to look around the room. And then he looked straight into the guy's eyes and nodded at him. "Today, my friend, despite all the problems of the present and the future, I tell you, I still have a dream. A dream that has deep roots going back to the American dream," he began. "One day, every valley will be filled, and every hill will rise, and every mountain will fall, the uneven paths will become smooth, the crooked paths will straighten, and the glory of the Lord our God will appear, and all flesh will see it." Lenny listened carefully. He understood that this was part of Martin Luther King's speech. Back then, on August 28, 1969. These words were familiar to him. But it was this passage that gave him confidence that he would be able to get out of this strange oblivion. There was a knock on the door. And every minute they started knocking insistently. But Lenny wasn't eager to open it. Even Martin Luther King stopped talking and just stared at the door. His face looked worried. "I read an interview somewhere with one of the people who were in a coma. Or was there clinical death? Damn, it doesn't matter. You just need to find a place where you first realized yourself, lie down there and try to sleep." The same bunk caught my eye. Lenny went up to her, and trying to stop shaking, lay down on top of her. He closed his eyes and thought about how to fall asleep. But the incessant knocking on the door scared him more and more. It was as if there was something there that wanted to rip him apart, devour him, kill him, eat him. After a while, the guy began to recall King's recent words. He replayed what he had heard, and from this he composed a prayer. He imagined that this holy man was sitting next to him, and it began to calm him down. It seemed like an eternity before Lenny realized that he could no longer hear any frightening sounds. After a while, he tried to open his eyes. The bright light from the window blinded him. Then a familiar voice said, "My God, Lenny, you're alive." Lenny tried to say something when he woke up, but it didn't work out. All the words suddenly disappeared. "Hush, hush. You've been out for almost a month. Your vocal cords need to recover." Lenny slowly turned his head and saw Joshua sitting next to him. Marius was sitting on his lap. The young man mumbled something again. Joshua did not understand him, but Marius instantly found himself on his master's chest. Yeah, you'll never understand these cats. They really say that animals sense the mood and emotions of their owners, Joshua said enthusiastically. Wait, I'm going to get a doctor. I also need to call Ryan and let him know that you're awake. Lenny's friend came out of the room. And the guy himself enjoyed the way the cat rubbed against his master's cheek and nose. A whole month. It was just a couple of hours for me. God save your soul, Martin Luther King. If it wasn't for you, I don't even know what would have happened to me, he thought. Lenny turned around and saw a vase on the bedside table. There were dried daisies in it. And there were still 2 of them, just like when he had just begun his journey through the depths of his own mind. There was a white envelope under the vase. Lenny carefully, still feeling weak, took the envelope and opened it. Inside was a letter that read, "We are sorry that things turned out this way, Mr. Lenny. As an apology, we are giving you a certificate for our not terrible quest Secrets of the Mind. You know our phone number. Yours sincerely, Miss Knight." Secrets of the Mind, you say? Saint King forbid me. No more quests. At least not with those 2 assholes. It's better at home, with a piece of pumpkin pie, the old-fashioned way. Lenny said in a low whisper, and touched the top of his cat's head with his left palm.